All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to journey back in time, stepping inside the stone walls of a fortress that has stood watch over the Irish landscape for more than 800 years. It's a story packed with invasion, power struggles, and pure survival. This is the incredible story of Trim Castle.
Now, I want to start with a pretty bold statement, one that comes straight from our source material. Trim Castle isn't just some important Irish landmark. It's considered one of the most impressive medieval castles in all of Europe. Let that sink in for a second. That alone tells you just how special this place really is.
So, that's the big question, isn't it? How does a fortress this gigantic just appear on the landscape? It doesn't. You know, a place like this is built on a foundation of pure power, of conquest, and just sheer ambition. So, let's dig into where it all began.
Our story kicks off right here, during a time of intense, often violent change in Ireland. This is when new powers showed up with swords, shields, and a grand plan to build fortresses that would stand for centuries.
To really get Trim Castle, you have to understand this exact moment in history. The Norman invasion wasn't just one battle. It was a complete redrawing of the map, a total reshaping of power. And castles like Trim, they were the tools they used, like planting a flag of stone to hold down their brand new territory.
And just look at how fast things were moving here. In 1172, the land is given to a Norman knight, Hugh de Lacy. Then, just a few years later, bam, it's handed over to this almost legendary figure, Richard de Clare. You know him as Strongbow. But the real game changer? That happens in the 13th century. That's when a guy named William de Valentia takes over and starts this massive expansion, turning the castle into the stone giant we see today.
And this slide right here, this is the why. It was all about location, location, location. By building the castle right here, the Normans essentially created a strategic gatekeeper. If you controlled Trim, you controlled everything moving in and out of Dublin, the troops, the supplies, the trade. This was way more than just a home. It was a powerful statement, planted right in the middle of Irish soil.
Of course, when you build a fortress this big and this important, you're basically painting a giant target on it. Those walls weren't just for show. They were built to be tested. And pretty soon, its history was about to be written in the heat of battle.
Okay, lock this year in your mind, 1328. This is a huge moment. It's when the castle faced a critical test, a point where its very existence was hanging in the balance, and it became a major chapter in the struggle for Ireland. And here's the showdown. On one side, you've got Irish rebels, led by Thomas Fitzmaurice, trying to take this Norman fortress. They surrounded the castle, they laid siege to it, but those mighty defenses, they held. The garrison inside fought them off and secured a massive victory.
And believe me, that is not an exaggeration. This wasn't just some small skirmish. As our source points out, it was a huge turning point. That victory reinforced Norman control over the entire region and proved just how valuable this stone fortress was. The castle had done its job, and then some.
But here's the thing about power, right? It never stays in one place for long. So the next chapter in Trim's long story is all about who held the keys to the castle as the centuries rolled by and the political landscape of Ireland kept changing.
We mentioned this guy before, but you really can't overstate the importance of Richard de Clare, better known to history as Strongbow. He was one of the absolute main players in the Norman invasion, and his direct connection to Trim Castle is what cemented its top-tier status right from the very beginning.
And this is what makes it all so real. This isn't just some name you read in a history book. If you go to the castle today, you can literally see his mark still on the place, features with his name, even his family crest carved into the stone. It's an incredible, direct connection all the way back to the 12th century. Okay, let's hit the fast-forward button a few hundred years. Now we're in the 16th century, and there's another major shift in power. The castle is now in the hands of one of the most powerful Irish noble families of the time, the Fitzgeralds. It's just a perfect example of how that balance of power was always in motion, and Trim Castle was always right at the heart of it.
So after all that drama, all the sieges, the battles, the families coming and going, what happens to this mighty fortress? What is its fate today? And how exactly was it reborn?
Well, today the castle is probably more alive than it's ever been. It's a huge tourist attraction, thanks to some absolutely incredible restoration work. They host cultural events, historical reenactments, and the views from the top looking out over the River Boyne? Just breathtaking. It's the perfect gateway to the beautiful village of Trim.
And maybe the best part of all is that you can walk right through this history yourself.
You can stand inside those imposing walls. You can climb the ancient towers. And you can explore the main keep, just trying to imagine the centuries of life and conflict that played out on the very spot where you're standing.
Which brings us to a final thought. When you think about it, from Norman conquest to Irish nobility, from a fortress of war to a national treasure, Trim Castle has seen it all. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other stories are those ancient stones still waiting to tell?